as was mentioned earlier, commercial resources is the newest part of the agenda. And this is how I would phrase it. One of the most successful parts of the March storm that is going on in society and in our space society right now is space station cargo delivery and commercial crew. That we're doing commercial development, ownership, and operation, and NASA's buying services for those. That is one of the biggest success stories of the March storm back in the 1990s. The March storm for 3 years, starting in actually 96, 97, 98, made it really our top, other than cheap access to space and funding X-33, made the Commercial Space Act, which we actually got passed in 1998, our top priority. We got it passed through the House in 1996, and we focused like a laser on actually, because we had really strong leadership in the House of Representatives from Newt Gingrich and Bob Walker and Dana Rohrabacher. We could get it through the House. The problem was the Senate, so we focused really hard on getting it in 1997, 1998, get the Commercial Space Act out of Congress. A key piece of that legislation, which was drafted by the gentleman sitting over here, you're going to hear from in a few minutes, Jim Muncie, who was on the Space Subcommittee in the House, actually specified in law that NASA shall buy commercial space station cargo delivery services, and specified in law that it will be commercial terms FAR Part 12 purchases. NASA let that go and allowed it to happen because they thought they were going to have shuttle forever. There was this exception for shuttle. When we got it specified in law, a really critical piece of legislation that was actually modeled after previous legislation that space activists had got through the Congress called the Launch Service Purchase Act, which actually forced NASA to buy commercial launch services. We now want to take that successful model to the next step, which is to make NASA buy commercial services for lunar and asteroid resources, for propellant, any propellant they want in space, and for delivering payloads, crew and cargo. We do it from the space station. Now we want crew and cargo delivery to the moon, or to actually cislunar space. We want to take that proven model, and one way to introduce that, which we emphasize here, is give credit to Congress for commercial cargo and crew. That it was their foresight of Congress that created this law back in 1998 that created the success of SpaceX. They should take credit by having the foresight 20 years ago to pass this law that has America now recapturing leadership in the world in space. It's not Elon. Congress should take it. Was smart enough to know that the brilliance and the genius of American free enterprise is how America succeeds in the world. And so Elon only is there because Congress knew this and passed a law enabling this. And we want the same thing to go on for development and use of resources from the moon and the asteroids, and for creating a propellant economy in space. So that's the general conversation. And we want to actually find out who is interested in helping us create a law to take that same philosophy, that same proven philosophy, now to apply to these issues.
So it's important to note we do not have draft legislation for that, right? So if the staffer is looking through the packet that you hand them and they're like, wait, so you have these other, where is this draft? Like, no, we want you to write something. I mean,
well, we'll help you write.
We'll help you write.
If we had a member of Congress that I wanted to introduce a law
Yeah.
on that, we would draft the bill. We would help draft the bill give them a first draft that they could do. We would help them if they wanted. If they want to go write it, they can go. But we think there's this great opportunity here. There is a growing interest in Congress of using commercial methods, and we think this is the next new issue that we need to focus on. Any questions? Discussion.
That's another good point. We can help if any staffer or member of Congress is like, ooh, we want to write a law about whatever. We have the capability to help draft this legislation or any
Right.
space
So
legislation.
you capture that. If they wanted to write a law about something,
Yeah.
Andrew,
So Bridenstine introduced something similar a month ago, is that right?
they do not have anything like this. One of our targets would be to get Bridenstine to include into his Space Renaissance Act something focused on this. We would like that. They need to expand the Space Renaissance Act to capture this idea. They have, it's not there yet.
It's like one of the only things not in.
That's true.
Question, so someone, staffers familiar with the Space Renaissance Act or Bridenstine's office, not their office, obviously, how we want to respond to the fact that, how does this differ from the Space Renaissance Act, or do we want to even,
You can just say, the Space Renaissance Act doesn't have it. We think this is missing. Just say it.
Yeah.
This is like, this is like, there's companies that are developing to do lunar resources and asteroid resources. We would say, we're private citizens. We think this is missing. This should be part of what we're doing.
Could you maybe give us like a really brief overview of what the Space Renaissance Act is? Because I feel like we might
No,
get
thank you.
questions.
The brief overview is this. It's a catch-all bill for a ton of different ideas that he's putting in one bill to, so that you can pull out by future members of Congress for future space legislation. And Bridenstine is a future space congressional leader, and he's in his second term, and he's been very good at. He's got the right mindset and the right focus, and he wants to do good things by space, so he's kind of grabbed a catch-all bill.
But I think it's a good question to bring up, like, what if a staffer says, oh, well, Bridenstine's already doing this?
You say, no, he isn't.
No, I mean, but what if, on another item, for instance, ISS gapless, there's aspects of that.
Yes, the Bridenstine bill has something like the seamless transition. We like our legislation better than the Bridenstine legislation. We think he's asking for feedback. We think this is an improvement over. We think actually that Bridenstine has it in there. It's great. It's a good start. With ours we think is better. We'd actually recommend this as a substitute.
can we say we're providing that to his office already, the feedback?
Yes, we're going to provide that to his office. Yes.
What's the point of him formally introducing this bill if he doesn't have any like expectation of it moving forward? Is it to show the other members of Congress that it somewhat has legitimacy or something? Because so many crap bills get introduced that go nowhere. So
Yeah, he's trying to sort of advance ideas and move the debate forward and get people realizing that there's a lot more ideas that could be put in space legislation and that Congress should be going beyond what was done last year with the Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act. So that's really his goal. His goal is to push ideas for improving U.S. leadership in space across military, civil, commercial.
Sure.
So he's just, engaging in the war of ideas and getting it out there and putting it on other people to say, no, we shouldn't do that, basically.
okay, interesting.
On dozens of issues. I mean, literally dozens of issues are covered by that bill.
I'd just like to add that specifically with regard to the gapless legislation, two things. First off, the Space Renaissance Act language is broadly similar to our language. In other words, that what is in the Bridenstine bill is not, there's a couple of things we might object to, but it's broadly similar.
And we actually think he picked that up in the bill because we pushed this last year.
But, we have very strong reason to believe that he started with what we had last year to build his bill. The second thing I'll say is that I think our language is better, and without specifying, we've gotten extremely positive feedback from major industry players on our bill. So we're going to be pushing our bill to Bridenstine and also to other people who are interested in introducing it.
And just so you know, on our ISS transition to commercial space stations, we have lots of evidence. We are developing strong support both from the White House and across Congress that we're getting lots of agreement on this issue, that we need a plan to do the transition, and it needs to be a credible plan. The only resistance to it really is within NASA. But we are winning the substantive argument that we should do this. This is a winning issue across the aisles, both it's hard to get the White House and Congress to agree on many issues, but this is one where we're getting, real agreement, so. Other questions on this, commercial development, commercial purchase? All right. Next up, Jim Muncie, we could get it to the House. The problem was the Senate, so we focused really hard and get it in 1997, 1998, get the Commercial Space Act out of Congress. A key piece of that legislation, which was drafted by the gentleman sitting over here, you're gonna hear from in a few minutes, Jim Muncie, who was on the Space Subcommittee in the House, actually specified in law, as was mentioned earlier, commercial resources is the newest part of the agenda. And this is how I would phrase it. One of the most successful parts of the March storm that is going on in society and in our space society right now is space station cargo delivery and commercial crew. That we're doing commercial development, ownership and operation, and NASA's buying services for those. That is one of the biggest success stories of the March storm back in the 1990s. The March storm for 3 years, starting in actually 96, 97, 98, made it really our top, other than cheap access to space and X-35, that NASA shall buy commercial space station cargo delivery services, and specified in law that it will be commercial terms FAR Part 12 purchases. NASA let that go and allowed it to happen because they thought they were going to have shuttle forever. But there was this exception for shuttle. Funding X-33 made the Commercial Space Act, which actually got passed in 1998, our top priority. We got it passed through the House in 1996, and we focused like a laser on actually, because we had really strong leadership in the House of Representatives from Newt Gingrich and Bob Walker and Dana Rohrabacher.